And we're celebrating Africa Day here on the channel. Of course, it is the 57th anniversary of the founding of the Organization for African Unity, now called the African Union. And to discuss, we're joined by our foreign editor, Sophie Mokoena. Sophie, thank you very much. Tell us a bit more about what the president had to say as chair of the AU, as a South African president, in the midst of a pandemic today.
Well, the president spoke passionately about how the continent has to work together. In other words, all member countries, the 55 member countries of the AU, must work together to try and fight this COVID-19. He also mentioned the fact that the African CDC Center is working very hard to ensure that there is collaboration in terms of all the different regions to work together to find solutions, but also to ensure that you also look at how you can assist member countries who can't afford to assist their own people. We know that when you look at the region like the Sub-Sahara region, the African continent, there is a problem in terms of the health infrastructure and facilities, medication, also the staff, healthcare workers, you have very few. Some of them have gone abroad to work there, and therefore you need more capacity on the continent right now, and therefore working together will assist the continent to deal with this pandemic. He also spoke about how the international community is obliged to help the continent, looking at the G7 countries, particularly the industrialized nations, what they need to do in terms of assisting the continent, the multinational institutions such as the IMF, the World Bank, how they can assist the continent. And of course, the G20, where South Africa is a member, and speaking about how he has persuaded member countries of the G20 to assist the continent, looking at the loans. Many countries are owing lots and lots of money, and therefore they must be assisted during this difficult time, but also giving hope that on silencing the guns, we have made headways, but you still have challenges in some countries. I mean, Libya being the case in point, and that it is the responsibility of the AU. The AU must be at the center of trying to find solutions in Libya, because you must have African solutions for African problems. And therefore, he was actually rallying the continent to say, let's work together, let's take our rightful place, let's look at our challenges, let's resolve our own challenges.
So you're so right, because before COVID-19, this was seen as the year the AU championing the silencing of the guns. So is that still being seen as realistic?
Well, when you look at what's happening, clearly we are not going to be able to silence all the guns on the continent right now. I've just made an example of Libya, but on our doorstep here in Mozambique, you have a challenge there in the northern part of Mozambique, where you have people fighting there and killing many ordinary Mozambicans. We saw the president of Mozambique last week going to Harare to meet the current chair of SADC organ on politics and defense, President Mnangagwa, asking for help, and Mnangagwa saying that they will assist Mozambique. And of course, we saw our Minister of International Relations, Dr. Naledi Pandor, saying that they have received a request from Mozambique that they should assist, and they are willing to look at this issue, because the instability in Mozambique, it's likely to affect all the neighboring countries, and South Africa being one.
Sophie, the old sort of traditional criticism of the AU is that it's been toothless. Do you think that whole rhetoric around the AU is changing? Has it changed?
It depends who you're speaking to. Many people believe that AU is working very hard. You look at the different agencies that we have. You look at the NEPAD, you look at African Peer Review Mechanism, where countries are being held accountable. You also look at the African Development Bank that is assisting different countries. But you do have people who are critical, saying that on governance and particularly on politics, there's still a problem there. You find member countries supporting each other, and where you have challenges of human rights. Also, we see a new trend where instead of countries going to elections and appointing or electing a proper leader for the particular country, now there's this exchange of power and the discussions, and the person leaves office. now people are beginning to say, in other words, the voting process doesn't even help ordinary citizens of the continent. Therefore, you still have issues that you have to resolve. The issue of poverty, the issue of health challenges, education, the young people who constitute the majority of the population on the continent. They are unemployed. Some of them are victims of drugs, and therefore you have to do something to ensure that those young people are involved in the economic sectors, different economic sectors on the continent. And also remember, these are the future leaders of the continent, and therefore you must really take care of young people on the continent. I mean, the Prime Minister of Lesotho, Moeketsi Majoro, when I spoke to him on Saturday, he actually raised a concern around the issue of young people who don't have a future or who are still struggling to find jobs, and therefore saying that we have to invest in the young population.
Yeah, the youth bulge, is it a strength or a weakness if those jobs don't come? Thank you very much. That was foreign editor Sophie Mokoena on Africa Day. Now, as the continent celebrates all things African, some believe more needs to be done to promote African spirituality, history and science in modern society. They say while great strides have been made to preserve African culture, many have disconnected from their roots and customs. Our reporter Selwani Kakao and video journalist Zolani Alexander bring us Africa Day from the perspective of spiritualists.
Gogo Kiachile Kamu Malaji and her husband Ngaga Mpho have been practicing as traditional healers for over a decade.